Hello, dear community, and very welcome to our Google for Startups talk today. We have 6 fantastic startups and founders, receivers of Black Founders Fund from Google. They're all from DACH region and have really aspiring companies that they're building. Let me introduce them, but first, my co-host, Victoria Tani Robinson, Senior Program Manager from Google. Victoria, welcome.
Thank you so much for having us. We're so excited to talk about our amazing founders today.
They're really amazing, and we'll split them in 2 groups because we have 6 startups, 6 founders. We'll first start with 3 of them, and then the other group will join us. Maybe we'll do 2 episodes. Let's see how this goes. Super important topic that we want to discuss, and we'll jump into them in a second. First startup that we have with us, Reframed. Akim Nguyen. Akim, servus.
Nguyen. Hi.
Nguyen, thank you. And Sharif Frog. Hello, Sharif.
Hola.
We'll talk to you about what you guys do, inclusive eyewear products for a diverse world. The second startup, Finisca, IoT products to help cat and dog owners track the health of their pets. Rapafadzo Marumbo, Europa is with us. Hi, Europa.
Hello, thank you for having me.
And last but not least, Busy, SaaS-enabled marketplace for content production. Jonas Owenia is with us as CEO. Welcome, Jonas.
Yes, hi, nice to meet you, and thanks for having me here.
So I'm really excited to find out about what you guys do. But before we jump into this discussion, Victoria, why did Google start this initiative? It was a European initiative in 2022. We have the DACH founders with us today. Why is this initiative important for Google?
Well, so for Google, it's important to level the playing field and make sure that everybody participates and develops the digital revolution, has a part in it. In order for it to work for everybody, it has to be built by everybody. So access to that is important. What we know is that for Black founders, it's disproportionately harder to receive funding, for example, to fundraise and receive funding. So Google wanted to set an example and start these funds. It started in the US in 2020. Since last year, it's expanded to other regions, including Brazil and Africa. And we also had our first Black Founders Fund Europe last year. Last year, we invested $2 million in 30 startups. And those startups went on to raise $81 million so far in follow-on funding, raised their employment rate by 21%, increased their monthly recurring revenue. So you can just tell, like, with the support of Google and also the visibility that comes with that, with us just showing the world, look at these amazing things that Black founders are building, that leads to more trust of VCs, or just, starts to challenge the vision of what a successful tech founder looks like. So much can be accomplished. So we're excited that we doubled the investment this year to $4 million. Invested in, or are investing in 40 companies this year, 6 of which are from the DACH region, which we're super excited about. And we just can't wait to see how we can support these founders in growing to these amazing places and just set an example.
Fantastic. Let's have a short look at what you guys do. First of all, Akim and Sharif, what do you guys do exactly?
Well, as the introduction said, we create eyewear for a diverse world. That is because eyewear in general is created for Caucasian nose profiles, and in a way to also amplify what Google and Victoria said, is that for design products to work for everyone, they have to be created by everyone to some degree. And us as a Black-owned brand and creating products that don't just fit us, but can fit other people, Black people, people of Asian descent, people with Down syndrome, and of course, as well as white people.
Fantastic. When did you start with your idea?
We started with greater degree of seriousness last year when we had our Kickstarter campaign. So I guess I would say July, June 2021. Yeah.
And where did you start it? Where are you based?
We are based in Berlin.
Okay. And how is it to be a Black founder in Berlin? Give us some idea on that. Do we need to raise awareness on that? Do you have more difficulties when it comes to raising capital and all the VC questions that we have?
I think it's, as a Black founder, you stand out in Berlin. Everybody knows Berlin is one of the biggest startup ecosystems in Europe, but I see at least if I following the news, a lot of startup capital is going to certain type of founders that don't really look like me. So I think it's quite interesting that Akim and I doing our own thing in the city. Even though we have a startup, I don't really feel that I'm part of the startup ecosystem as much as I guess white founders.
Europa, what about you? You are Black founder and female, so we know that both groups have it more difficult and there are biases towards both groups. How is it to be a female Black founder in Germany? And before you answer this question, what does your startup do?
So I'm co-founder of Finisca, and like you rightly mentioned before, we do IoT products to help pet owners, particularly cat and dog owners, track the health of their pets. And our vision is really to make sure that pets aren't suffering in silence. Our vision is to make sure that pets are healthy, happy, and heard. And that's a challenge because pets cannot speak a language that humans understand. So we use tracking, data analytics. We use that to be able to determine and identify health problems early. And yeah, we want to help or empower pet owners to be able to improve the health of their pets, and also to know when their help is needed by tracking the right vitals and sending them lots of colorful reports and lots of notifications, letting them know when their pets need them.
It's a big market. We have a Tractive, very successful company for tracking, for example, pets in Austria. How big is your market? How do you estimate it?
So it's about 7 billion globally. Pet tech is 7 billion globally, but also pet tech is still focusing, pet health tech is still focusing on invasive devices, so things that are attached to the pet's body. And we are trying now to incorporate.
We lost the tone. Maybe just repeat the last sentence because this was a short break in the tone.
Okay. So I was saying that the market globally, pet tech, is about 7 billion and growing at 24% annually. But health tech currently focuses on collars, so devices attached to the pet's body. And we are more looking into how we can incorporate sensors into the home and into other types of furniture that your pet is already using, like their bed. And if you have a cat, the toilet and the smart food bowls and these kinds of things.
It's a super interesting market. When did you start?
So we incorporated in 2021, April 2021, but we actually started product development in 2019 and have been testing our first product since August 2020. So product-wise, we're about 2-3 years old, and then as a company, a year old.
How have you been funded so far? Is it a bootstrapped story, or do you have some investment on board?
It's all three. So in Germany, if you're familiar with it. And then after that, we were completely bootstrapped for a year. So the whole of 2021. And then at the end of 2021, we closed our seed round.
How was it for you? How was it for you as a Black founder and female founder to close the seed round, to find investments? Did you have any difficulties? Did you experience any biases?
So I think as a female founder, I mean, my co-founder and I are both women of color. My co-founder has Cambodian origins, and we are building not just a tech company, but like a hardware company. So one of the biggest challenges for us has actually been trust. So just nobody thinks we can do this. And any call we get onto, any pitch we have, that's the first step for us, is even like positioning ourselves as capable founders or capable person. Doesn't help that we're both young. That doesn't add to it. So I think that has been a really big challenge for us, as people believing that we are actually experts in the subject matter, people believing that we are actually capable of accomplishing the goals that we've set as a company. And as a Black founder, I feel like the first thing for me has always been actually just believing myself. It's really almost internal, that I don't see a lot of founders, and I'm so grateful for, initiatives like Google for Startups, because I see people that look like me. I get to see what they're doing, how they're doing it. I get to correspond, chat, bits and bobs like that. But that has been the biggest challenge. Was when I first started, trying to find people that had a similar background as me, that looked like me, that had a similar experience, and finding out how they did it. And my challenges were also unique to me. Like I needed a visa, for example, in order to be allowed to be an entrepreneur in Germany. And so, yeah.
Okay, thank you. There was a small lag in the video, but never mind. I think we got the context. Jonas, last but not least, before we jump into the general discussion, what do you guys do, and how is your experience by being a Black founder in Germany?
Yes, hi. So BZ, as you said, we're a SaaS-enabled marketplace. So that just means that on the supply side, we're a global community of creatives, and we kind of democratize access to the creative industry. And then on the demand side, we make it easy for companies like Zalando, SAP, Pinterest, Urban Sports Club. I'm just name dropping, but a bunch of different companies to kind of produce content, so photos and videos, both remotely and at scale, by hiring all the creatives, equipment, locations you need, and then we kind of give you a bunch of tools to kind of manage those productions at scale, et cetera, et cetera. And so for me, the idea, I guess, from the beginning, we technically started in 2018 in Switzerland and then moved to Berlin, actually, was always the idea that I'm going to try not to care as much as possible, I guess, and just kind of push through, especially for fundraising. We, for example, use quite a lot of bots and automation. So that means scraping platforms like LinkedIn and kind of mass outreach to investors. So it was just the idea that I know it might be much harder for me, for example, to fundraise, but if I have to speak to 500 investors instead of 100, that's just what I'm going to do, I guess, and keep it going and keep kind of pushing through things. It's been a little bit of a mess, but overall, yeah, it worked out, and I try to stay as positive and optimistic as possible. And usually, I guess that's the one thing I've got going for me is I usually talk a lot, and I'm very positive, excited, and so that usually works out at least for investors. Yeah.
Perfect. What's the feedback of investors? Do you feel did you feel any biases there, or you feel comfortable? Maybe your personality convinces them regardless of your color or language origin or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of everything. I never had any really crazy situations, I guess, but especially being I used to have, for example, really long dreads, and we worked, like, for example, with a really big community and creative space, etc. So for quite a long time, people kind of looked at us as if we were like a bunch of hippies running around in the woods, having a little party and shooting photos. And that's pretty much the way to kind of like get over that step. Like, we're actually really serious, and we're actually trying to build a company and scale a company and build like a global platform, etc. And kind of running away from that little local agency, a bunch of little creative people just having fun in the woods, So that was just like the biggest.
How did you fund your company so far? Was it bootstrapped, or did you combine different sources of funding?
A little bit of everything. So we got quite lucky. So already in Switzerland, we won a bunch of grants, and from my co-founders' engineering school, etc. Then we moved to Berlin. We got some funding from the Berlin Startup Stipendium. Then we had to bootstrap for a little while, and we're able to raise 3 rounds of funding already. And so that worked out pretty well. So mostly with angel investors, and then a couple early stage funds as well. So I guess we got lucky on that side. And then since we're doing community stuff, we always have quite a lot of people kind of around BZ talking about BZ, etc. So that's been like a big help, I guess, and big push as well.
Perfect. What about Reframe? How are you guys? How have you been funded? A hardware product, maybe you need a capital to produce it, to produce the MVP. How did you go about that?
Well, as I said earlier, we had a Kickstarter campaign. So this allowed us to essentially raise money before we could produce anything. And I think that worked out quite well for us. But we were also part of a Berlin-based startup incubator program for about a year, which allowed me and Sharif to focus on developing Reframe for about a year or so. And we also received some funding from an angel investor. Again, this allowed us that possibility to work on Reframed without worrying too much about our daily costs. But we've also bootstrapped for some time as well. So I guess, like everyone else, it is a bit of everything else, essentially.
What do you guys think in general? What do we need to do to have more Black founders activated in DACH region, in German-speaking area? Do we need role models like you? Do we need to talk about it? Because there is a vast potential, a lot of very, very smart founders out there that could build great companies. What's your take on that?
Well, at least from my perspective, I think it's you need representation in different segments. So of course you need role models, if you will, or you just need entrepreneurs like Europa and Jonas, and of course Sharif as well. You need, of course, people in the investment area. So you need VCs that do not look at Europa and then think, okay, so black and female and also young, and then think like, okay, maybe this is not the stereotypical person that we usually fund. But you need VCs that are also like Europa, right? That can, how do you say, sympathize with not that other people do not, but I think there's a possibility of a much easier connection. So you need Black VCs. You need, of course, support from incubator programs as well. Maybe not support as well. You just need incubator programs that also take, let's say, founders from non-represented communities. I think to some degree as well, it's also an issue of exposure to entrepreneurship. At what stage are founders exposed to entrepreneurship? Is it in schools? I think if you grow up in a relatively, let's say, wealthier neighborhood or wealthier community, chances are that you are exposed to entrepreneurship much earlier. You are, of course, exposed to entrepreneurship in poorer communities, but this is informal entrepreneurship, what people probably do not consider as entrepreneurship. So it's at what degree are all these areas coming together to form essentially a great catalyst, so to speak.
Sharif, what was your first contact with entrepreneurship? Is it your family, or did you just kind of bump into it? How did it happen?
Actually, no one in my family in my setting is actually having a business. I'm literally the first one who started something, and I think I read something about the founder of WeTransfer, who's a guy from Amsterdam, and I found him very cool. And I'm also from Amsterdam, and I was like, okay, this guy is making money with his own business. And I was at the time 18, and I was so shocked that nobody told me that it's actually possible to do your own thing and be self-sufficient. So when I was 18, I started actually reading and diving into entrepreneurship and started my first company when I was 19 or 20 in Amsterdam.
Victoria, are these similar stories that you hear across Europe when talking to Black founders? Do they have similar issues that they're addressing?
Absolutely, absolutely. So even in London, where the ecosystem is a lot more mature, and there's a lot more Black representation in the city in general, they're struggling with the same thing. And I think it all comes down, and it's been mentioned several times, to trust. As an investor, I need to trust the person I give money to. If I haven't seen someone from that community be successful before, maybe I don't trust that they can do it. So I think that's why it's so important for us to make sure we amplify these role models on people who are successful. So because this will have a ripple effect.
Definitely, but on the other side, I'm just thinking spontaneously, correct me if I'm wrong, on the maybe side of the advantages, like reframe this saying, they are addressing a much bigger market, because maybe startups who are not thinking about who is going to wear this product, they exclude maybe the female population, they exclude maybe the current population and others. So I'm thinking, does your product actually have a broader chance and a broader market to address it?
Is that a question for Reframe?
Yes, for you, but jump in also, Jonas and Europa. Whoever wants to take it. Do you have advantages as well? Well,
I was going to say, maybe you have a couple advantages then when you come and where you have more possibilities in connection to communities that other maybe startup founders might actually not have. And so, for example, in our case right now, there was a really cool thing about diversity that we never really focused on, but we actually have people in the team from 12 different countries, something like that. And so kind of naturally you start connecting with people from many different places that speak many different languages. And then you start kind of noticing problems and possible solutions to problems that most other startup founders might have actually not seen, just because they don't have to interact with those problems on a daily basis. But then you also have the thing, I guess, that because maybe you come from another place, and so for my side family, I don't even speak German actually, and we're based in Berlin, but then you kind of get used to it, and you're able to actually see how it is for German founders as well, for example, but you also then have the advantage of coming from maybe not just one place, but multiple places, and kind of traveling and going through the many different places in the world, etc. So there is also like big advantages to this. Yeah, I would say there are definitely kind of competitive advantages as well. Yeah.
Rob, what about you? Any competitive advantages being a female Black founder in German-speaking area?
So I would say it's actually a double-edged sword. I feel like as a Black woman, if I was doing a startup to do with hair care, for example, and that is a huge market and that's incredible, then I would have a competitive advantage. Even when speaking to investors, they would immediately assume I'm somehow an expert on the subject matter. The problem comes when you branch out of the things that are considered typical for your whatever profile you've been given, right? So in general, pets already aren't really, you don't really associate it directly with like being Black. There's no direct connection. So my first job when I have to pitch to someone is to actually convince them that as a Black woman, I like pets and I have one and I've grown up with them. And then after that, you add the tech element, where as a woman and then as a Black person, again, it's like, what do you even know about this? How educated are you on it? How much experience do you have? So it's a double-edged sword in the sense that in some areas, you do have that competitive advantage, and then in other areas, you're at a disadvantage. And the worst part is we are not the ones who get to pick which area we belong to or how we categorize. So everyone else is deciding for us that, hey, you're Black, so you should, or you're a Black woman, you should know a lot about hair. And then Akeem and Sharif come in and we're like, actually, we also know a lot about eyewear. And they also have that job to explain that, well, we're capable, we know what we need to do, we have everything that is needed, we just need the money or we just need the market, whatever the case is. So we don't even have the control or the power to decide which boxes we're put into, which makes it even more challenging, even in the cases where we do have that competitive advantage.
This is a super point. So how do you go about it, Akeem? How do you convince break the ice, so to say, to prove your competence or to signal your competence in this field? Do you have any tricks? Do you do you address the biases that are maybe in the air?
Perhaps Europa made a very good point. Is that, well, maybe I suppose we are in a fashion product, so maybe some people associate black people with being cool and fashionable and stuff like this. But with regards to investors, I think we've obviously faced skepticism, not so much with respect to competency, but with an issue of well, if you initially, maybe I should go back. Initially, we started as creating reframed or eyeglasses for Black people, primarily just for Black people's nose profiles. And shortly after that, we got responses from a lot of people from Asian descent who said, well, I have a similar problem, but I feel excluded from your, let's say, your narrative, so to speak. And similarly, we got responses from people with Down syndrome who said, like, well, I think you're doing something that is really wonderful, but I feel excluded. So Sharif and I, we decided that we need to broaden our narrative. So because we felt that there's a market that is definitely underrepresented. So at least that's what we did. And with respect to convincing investors is an issue where the question, well, if you say there's a problem that no other company has paid much attention to it, then they say, well, then it's probably not that much of a problem. Otherwise, Ray-Ban or, I don't know, Gucci or some other brand would be developing products for those markets, right? So the where we have to let's say convince investors is to say, well, if you think of the next 20 major eyewear brands, they are all owned by one global conglomerate, Luxottica, so to speak. And all these things are probably produced or designed in a very, probably at a similar location by similar people, probably also, well, let's say men and women probably as well. But there is this, let's say, homogeneous aspect, these development teams that tends to produce products that are geared for the same target audience. So for us, the conviction that we have to bring to the investors is, so if you look at this 60 to 70% of the world population, which isn't Caucasian, it is actually quite a much stronger, let's say, market. If you look at China, Sub-Saharan Africa, Brazil, the younger people, let's say it's the growing market where disposable income, or at least the how would you put it? The relative wealth is is rising up as opposed to some major European or Western
saturated
Western
markets.
Communities. Yeah. Exactly. So I think there is a lot of potential in the market segments that we target. I think that the established eyewear companies tend to overlook.
Do you see any VC companies or investment companies on the market who specialize, let's say, on funding black founders or female founders? Because what I see on the VC side, they have been raising the question of diversity, some of them quite strongly, because they see they're missing out on fantastic deal flow. Because if only white male founders send them their pitch decks, they're missing on an immense potential on the other side. So do you see this awareness on the VC side from your perspective? All of you.
Yes. From us as Reframe, definitely. I think we are seeing more VCs, also VCs of color, coming into this space of funding startup founders of color, which I think is very good. I think there is as I said earlier, it depends on the person, but there's a much easier connection or sympathy between these two entities. So I think that there definitely is the case. But maybe another issue is where we think of VCs and we think of them as risk takers, right? But VCs are inherently not risk takers. They only go or they only jump on an already moving trend. They're only willing to support a team that, in their perspective, is already winning, right? So if the team that is considered as already winning is male and white, then they're more likely to fund that team. And if you are, let's say, black, female, and maybe young, you are less likely to get the funding, even though you might be on a very winning team. And there's example after example of black-led startups that are doing really well. They have the metrics to show that they have a successfully sustainable business, but they're not getting the funding. Instead, they get these awards without any sort of funding attached to them. But this, of course, is changing over the past few years. Given the death of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement, I think there's been a lot of these initiatives. And also, I guess that's also why we are here as well, right? This Google Founders Fund is also came because of all these things that have happened over the past few years.
We've been talking on daily basis with many startups across Austria, Germany, and I'm fascinated by the smartness of all of you and things that you're doing. So I think there's a lot of potential that we're missing out at the end of the day for the better of the world. Jonas, do you feel things are moving forward?
Yes, I would say you definitely see a lot more funds kind of focusing on black founders, for example, etc. But definitely not enough yet, I would say. Where as a black founder, you can really expect to be funded at any given point. And so if it happens, it's more like the exception to the rule. And so the general rule, I guess, for black founders is just kind of you just gotta bootstrap, make it happen by yourself, I guess, and just prove your worth, I guess, or prove that you're able to execute, just really focusing on execution and traction, etc. So I think this is why most founders here probably were already building products or really moving forward and kind of proving the traction of the startup way before they actually got any funding. And then only then can you maybe kind of expect to get some funding, but it's really never kind of a given. So you rarely see see kind of Black founders raising a couple millions over 2 weeks with just a pitch deck. Those stories, you pretty much never see them. So maybe soon, it's starting. So this is why I'm pretty excited with initiatives like this from Google, for example. It kind of opens the door, and especially I think you saw that week when everything was announced, like everybody on LinkedIn was talking about this, and everybody saw it. And then everybody, all the investors I was talking to were getting quite excited about this, and we're looking into all the startups and kind of talking about this. It was like a really full week or two of just talking about this. So this, I think, is going to help like long term as well, just showing all these faces and all these stories, I guess. Yeah.
Victoria, I honestly wasn't aware that there was such a big issue on this topic in Europe, and you've been kind of nodding while Jonas was saying. You want to double down of what on his statement?
Well, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, we actually don't even have the right data to prove the point, right? It's all anecdotal. There haven't been studies done. We have data on gender representation with founders and on funding, because often in the German market, at least, when you talk about diversity inclusion, they start with women and they stop right there. Don't think intersectionally, and anything beyond which then often benefits white women. That's what we know. It's like the easiest common denominator. And then, that's why our fund is so very, very needed. I would love to comment on the advantage of our founders. I think you were spot on there, right? I think markets are being missed because, this one group, this one demographic of white, able-bodied cis men, just doesn't know everything. They don't know what all the consumers want, and especially the growing demographics that we are represented here. So I think there is so much that the VCs and that the world is losing out on if we don't put a lot of money and support behind those founders who are solving problems to create a better future for all of us. So I just, personally feel very strongly about that. That's so important, and it's important for everybody, not just for this group here. It's important for the world and for technology, the future to be safer for all, better for all. There's just so much here. And I think while there is a trend, and there are more, I know of a lot of people who are working on raising funds with a specific thesis on trying to focus on underrepresented founders beyond just gender. There is not enough. Not even in the US, there's so much work to be done. I think it would be such a, if you're searching for alpha, that's where it is. I think you need to go this route and really double down. I think it would be a very, very smart move. And while we're seeing signals and while there are a few trends, I think this is very small, very quiet rumblings. And I think a lot more has to happen. So I'm excited and hopeful, I'm honored to be part of one of the projects that is working on moving things forward.
Fantastic. Europa, maybe to wrap up this round, what are your next milestones? Maybe the question to all of these startups, what are your ambitions for this year? What's coming up, and maybe where can communities support you?
So from our end, we have been in our R&D phase for a very long time. We've been testing our first product called the Finisca base for almost 2 years now. So now we're getting ready for launch, and we are at the final stage of our design for manufacturing process. So we're really ready to mass produce this product. And we're launching at the end of August. So that's a huge milestone for us. Of course, pilot customers are awesome. They give you a lot of feedback, but now we are actually going to be on the market. And we're looking forward to it. We're looking forward to the learnings, but we're also, anticipating all sorts of challenges that come with that. So launching is really hard. If you are a pet owner, you should definitely go to finisca.com. You can sign up for our wait list. You can download our app. If you're not a pet owner, I encourage you to just get to know our story a little bit more. You can follow us on different social media platforms. You can recommend us to whoever you know who may own who may own a cat or a dog. And lastly, of course, we have to close our seed round. So we are planning to close that in by the end of this year. And as we have discussed, that comes with all sorts of interesting additional challenges when you're Black, female, and young, and doing hardware. So looking forward to it, but like we've discussed, it comes with challenges, and anyone who can in any capacity support us with that, we're always welcome. We're always forthcoming. So that's pretty much on our end. That's pretty much it.
Fantastic. Sharif, what about on your end? Milestones for this year?
So we want to release the new app, Reframe 2.0, and hiring our first engineer, UI designer, and content manager. So we're really building the team now this year and creating a better product.
Fantastic. Jonas?
For us, we're in a weird situation where we're managing 3 different platforms right now. So we're in the process of unifying everything. So that's a little bit of fun on the tech side. So our first goal is to finish that. Second goal, we already had a bunch of projects pretty much all over Europe and the US, etc. So we want to finish implementing ourselves in Europe, closing our seed round. That's going really well. So if anybody has too much money on their hands, I'll take whatever you have. So that's pretty cool. So investors, you can reach out. And then, I don't know, conquering the world and go from there, I guess.
Fantastic. Really keep up the good work. All the best for this year, for the milestones. Thank you for your insights and these inspiring stories that you have. Really lots of success for you on the future path. And we'll take a short break before we continue with our next 3 founders as exciting as these ones. All the best. Keep us updated and posted, and we'll report about your stories and your progress. Thank you. So welcome back. The second group of founders is ready. Victoria is still with me. Victoria, welcome back. And let me introduce our startups. Hyfindr, Steven Oji is with us, the B2B marketplace for hydrogen economy. Steven, welcome.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
Fantastic topic. What exactly do you guys do? Obviously, the energy is all over the place in media. What exactly do you do in the hydrogen space?
Yes, so actually Hyfindr came about because I've been working in this area for quite some years, and I've developed many systems, and always everybody talks about it, and then you actually need to build a system, some machine that will actually use hydrogen or produce electricity. And I've been in that position many times, and what you do then is you start looking for components to make this. You need compressors, you need humidifiers, DC-DC converters, valves, all these kind of things. And these are incredibly hard to find, these components, and they are often made by smaller companies that are also not so easy to find. And all these companies are located all around the world. So about 2 or 3 years ago, a friend of mine decided to come together and say, look, we're going to digitize this. We're going to digitize the hydrogen component supply chain and build up a place where people can meet and find information about these components and actually get them so that they can build their machines faster and so that the hydrogen economy can grow faster. So that's what Hyfindr is about, finding the right components and services and everything you need.
Oh, this is amazing. You guys are based in Stuttgart?
Yes, that's correct.
We'll be talking about that because the rest of the founders in the call are in Berlin, and I'll be curious to find out about how is it to be Black founder in Stuttgart. We'll come back to you in a second. Liquisto Technologies, a data-driven platform transforming excess inventory in manufacturing. Humphrey Yeboah is with us. Humphrey, welcome. We don't hear you. Maybe just switch on your tone. Yes.
Sorry about that. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Data-driven platform transforming excess inventory in manufacturing. It sounds like a product for the industry.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a product specifically for the mechanical engineering industry. And what we offer is a platform of digital solutions that allows them to basically deal with one of the biggest sources of waste in that industry, which is excess inventory. Most people don't know about it because it's sort of a silent waste creation area in industry, and that's essentially what we focus on, basically trying to make this whole area more of a circular economy.
Wow. How did you come up with this idea? How did you know about this problem?
So that's a very good question because it's technically a problem you wouldn't come across, but we basically joined a company builder here in Berlin, and what they do is they bring together companies from the industry and sort of create a database of problems industry and find entrepreneurs with relevant background who could help these companies solve these problems. And we had worked on a similar problem in a different space in the consumer goods space. So when we came across a problem, we're like, well, this problem, we have already solved it in the consumer goods area. We can help you with it. And so we jumped on it, right? Fantastic.
Propel is with us as well. Seun Owolabi, a multi-layer digital infrastructure to power the tech talent economy. Seun, welcome.
Hi, thank you. It's good to be here.
How can we imagine your product? What is it in particular?
The short definition has a lot of buzzwords, but it's quite simple, right? So Propel is, we have a demand and supply element. On the demand side, so we help companies across Europe kind of navigate hiring diverse talent, right? So we help companies like Mercedes, Stepstone, Actual Springer, hire talent from emerging markets. And on the supply side, we are working primarily across Africa. So growing up in Africa, I knew a lot of talented techies, with very good skill sets. And what we're doing is we realized at some point that for any local ecosystem to grow, or tech ecosystem to grow, there needs to be a lot of investment in pipeline and technology transfer. So what we are doing as Propel, rather than going and doing headhunting or poaching or recruitment, we do what we call regenerative or sustainable recruitment. So we go into African communities, tech communities. We give them access to infrastructure for jobs, for financial services. The idea being by helping tech communities to think about training institutions or tech hubs or peer-to-peer learning communities, by helping them grow, by helping them give their members access to all those jobs and services, we are effectively keeping that pipeline flowing. So in summary, on the demand side, we help European companies hire diverse talent, and on the supply side, we empower tech communities to make sure that they can do what they do much better and in a more scalable way.
Another 3 fantastic solutions. Victoria, maybe we didn't mention this in the first part of our talk. How do you select startups to receive the Black Founders Fund? What are the criteria? What were the criteria?
Yes, so we received over 700 applications across Europe this year. There were multiple rounds. We looked for attraction, obviously, for a problem that's being solved and for a company that we as Google can actually help amplify and support. So people, companies that are technology companies that can benefit from the best of Google, which we say is people, practices, and products. So multiple stages. We first looked at do they fulfill the basic criteria, and then we did interviews with 120 companies. Always there's 2 interviewers who independently scored them. Then there were lots of discussions about the finalists and where we aligned. And then there was another round with leaders at Google from different organizations, different product areas, who reviewed the recommendations that the selection committee had made.
Wow, so you do proper due diligence on these startups.
Pardon me?
You do a proper due diligence on these startups that come into your pipeline. So I guess you're a perfect partner for VCs, kind of selecting, filtering the pipeline that is investable.
Absolutely. We're looking forward to making lots of introductions.
Okay, perfect. Let's get back to the hydrogen. Germany seems to be very good area for that. I forgot the name of the startup that I'm thinking about, but the female founder is called Vaitea, and I think she's doing and producing the green hydrogen. Give us some insights on the German market, Steven. Is that a good market for hydrogen topics?
Yes, you're speaking about Vaitea from Enapter, who we actually also know very well, and who are actually also on our platform. So on our platform, you can find Enapter products. And if you, Dan, want to produce hydrogen today, you ask yourself, how am I going to do this? You can actually come to us, and then you'll find Vaitea's solution there. So actually wonderful that you're building this bridge. And yes, indeed, hydrogen is an energy carrier. And basically all of us, what we need is energy to power this, what we're doing here, or to heat our houses. And hydrogen is a very sustainable way of doing it. And so everything we do to enable the further use of hydrogen can help us in a very big way to save this big ball that we're all sitting on. So we're actually in a sustainable corner, even though we don't look like it that much, but this is a technology that can really make the world a better place. I mean, come think of it, the space shuttles use that. No one ever thinks about running a diesel generator up there.
Yeah.
These are sustainable things that we're working on, yes.
How did you come in contact with this topic? Are you an engineer yourself?
Yes, so comes kind of back to the whole Black Founders thing. I grew up in Africa as well, and it turns out that when we actually moved from let me say, from one neighborhood to a little bit better neighborhood, the difference there in the better neighborhood was that when the lights went off, which regularly happens, all the guys put on their diesel generators, blah, 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 and it was much louder and much more, bad air there. And I, as a young kid, already thought like, my goodness, isn't there a better way to make energy that we need? And fast forward several years later, I, working as an engineer at Mercedes, actually, turns out, see that they actually are developing technology which is based on fuel cells, which converts this hydrogen to electricity and water vapor. So if you have a hydrogen electric generator, it takes in the hydrogen and then generates electricity. And the only emission is water vapor. So like your teapot, it's, so it's actually very nice. And that kind of got me, So, and that was already many years ago. And I was like, oh, come, I'm going to work on this, make this happen. And at some point we realized this industry also has a problem of finding each other. And that's how the idea of the platform came about. And that's how we built Hyfindr. And it's been really a great ride. We launched the marketplace last year, and we see 20% growth almost every month. So it's great.
You guys have heard the discussion with the first three founders. What are your experiences of being Black founder in Germany? Did you experience biases? Were you able to fund your company? Did you have to bootstrap in order to prove that you're good enough for investments? Whoever wants.
Well, if you want, I can say. So firstly, to be honest, I never thought about it, that I'm a Black founder before going into this. And, my mom taught me early that, you always have to ask yourself, what's the opportunity here? And I would say for myself, if we talk to investors, so I think my opportunity is that he's going to remember the face, because maybe it's just looking different than the other ones. So maybe work with that. But at the same time, I also know, and it's been said earlier, that it's a thing of trust, that people tend to trust people that they can, relate to, or that look more similar to them or so. So I fully understand the challenge there, and I see it, and it's just amazing that Google is doing this to push this and bring this more onto the stage, and see that there's a lot of people doing great things, and also hopefully there'll be more venture capital people also, or people with capital basically, also of color, putting in money into things, So there should be more on both sides, and that's personally my wish for it, and it's just amazing how Google is showing us the way here.
By doing that, activating far more talent among Black founders to really solve, as we see it live right now, super relevant problems of this world. Seun, one more question in terms of kind of trust building. We've been talking about trust building on the venture capital side, but you guys have clients who are very traditional German companies. Maybe you're allowed to name a couple of them. How do they perceive you when they see a Black founder offering for them a solution that might be relevant for their industry?
I think it aligns very well with general psychology, that it's important to be able to ease people into stuff, right? For us as Propel, really promoting the idea of diverse talent, so which is fundamentally for German companies, talent that doesn't look like you, right? Is we had to start figuring out what are the quick wins. So like I said earlier, we currently help companies like Mercedes, we're a pipeline partner to, very large companies like Stepstone. And then the idea is there was a phase where the starting phase was, let's make you experience diverse talent. So you work with the first developer, the first designer, and you're like, this person is very impressive and as good as anybody else I could work with. After that, it's an easier conversation. So one of the things that we had to do early is, as a company, we had this model called no cure, no pay. So we don't charge any company upfront until you make a hire. That way, companies are like, I don't really understand the markets. I don't know where you guys are hiring from, but it's free until I make a hire. So why not try it? And also, we also learn to relate to very local problems. Right now, we're across I think 7 different countries in Europe. So we actively hire for clients there. And what we see is a lot of companies, for example, in Portugal, there's this thing where even the local developers are moving to the US or to the UK. So companies countries like Portugal, where they don't necessarily know how to hire from emerging markets, they have to do it because there's that need to do that. So we're playing in a couple of spaces, making sure we can ease people into it, but also working with market dynamics and trying to understand what are the market dynamics, where are things going, how can Propel help? And finally, we're in talent tech space. And talent is very universally relevant, right? A company is trying to look for an AI developer or, a blockchain developer. The idea is at Propel, we can come and we can help you solve any problem you have, when it has to do with talent. So for us, it's been a learning experience, but we've also learned to create successes for the companies along the way while creating some success for ourselves as well.
Perfect. Humphrey, what about you guys? Did you bootstrap? It's a technology, high-tech question actually that you're raising. Did you face any biases? Did you bootstrap before you were able to raise some funds?
Right. So yeah, we did bootstrap. We had a combination of bootstrapping combined with grants, and also what we did well in the beginning was have these paid pilots with our customers. So the paid pilots actually then also helped us extend our runway. Personally, for me, it's always difficult to sort of differentiate between where the difficulties are coming from. Is it because I'm a Black founder or because I'm a first-time founder? Because I think being both makes it extra difficult, right? Because investors, as we've already mentioned, it's really a lot based on trust. So if you're a first-time founder, they're not sure if giving you their money is going to bring back returns. And also, if you're a Black founder, then obviously they haven't seen many of you succeeding, so that adds on this additional probability that works against you. So what we did was we basically tried to, well, let me just say I'm a believer in probabilities, so I try to basically take steps where I can sort of increase my probability of succeeding in this area of entrepreneurship. So I joined a company builder, which has an infrastructure that makes it very easy for you to sort of get in touch with initial customers and also get in touch with the ecosystem in Berlin. So that obviously made things a bit easier. But ultimately, it's a lot more difficult if essentially you have all these minority circumstances working against you.
Okay. What would your advice be to maybe founders who are watching us now? How to start? Is the market changing? Is the awareness changing? What's your impression on that?
Right. So basically, the biggest lesson I learned is it's nice when you see in movies that people go out there with a pitch deck and a super brilliant idea and they raise money, because that's almost never happens in reality, at least not to people that look like me. So my advice would be that first focus on creating value, because ultimately what I've come to learn or realize is if VCs are more willing to listen to you and give you money if you show them money. So create value, gain some traction, and once you have traction, demonstrating that you can generate revenues, VCs will be more open to hearing you out, hearing your story, and giving you an ear. So that's pretty much the main advice that I would give to any aspiring founders, especially Black founders.
Victoria, would that be an advice that you give to all the applicants, for example, for your fund?
Well, unfortunately, it's a necessity for our community. Again, while it might be enough for someone who is a white young male founder to have a pitch deck and a great idea, and they can generate million in funding to work on that idea, that's just not the reality for Black founders in Europe, unfortunately.
Steven, how is that in the space of hydrogen? I assume that you need a lot of capital to build a product that you're building, or is it the digital platform that does not have any hardware aspects to it? How did you fund your path so far?
Yes, so you're right. Hydrogen requires quite a lot of capital to make it work. At the same, as we see, there's 500 billion going into building of hydrogen machines and infrastructure up until 2030. And that was the plan before the whole Ukraine thing started. So now there's much more focus and much more. Actually, yesterday I saw an email almost coming from the ministry in Berlin. So what are we doing? So there's really a lot going in there. At the same time, all this money is being used to build stuff. So that's where we come in to actually help build these connections. For our platform itself, we do not own hardware. We are a digital company, and therefore our investment is lower. At the same time, how did we go about this? Well, I'm fortunate to have already had a couple of years working experience, saving up some money, and this is where the Sparschwein came in. I just put in, my own funds and also my co-founders. So we have been working on that. We are very frugal with our spending. But we are actually also having some very good talks now into financing the next one, because we have big plans to grow. We want to move to another IT base. We are conquering more geographic regions, and also the team needs to grow. We have more than 85 vendors now, and we want to be increasing that number as we go. So that's how we went about funding. And I can also fortunately say that we have revenues. So that's also helping us grow. But as the hydrogen economy grows, we will grow with, and hopefully, and that's our mission, we want to help it grow even faster so that, we get there faster.
And are you confident in the current market environment to be able to get funding for your growth?
Yes, because I believe that we have a good product, and not only myself, but our customers believe that as well. And I think where there's a good solution that's being given to customers, there is the business to be made, and I think that will help us find the solution as well. Plus, again, we talked earlier about trust. So this Google program is great because Google is leading the way. And if you can say, look, Google has analyzed us, has done their due diligence, and they are convinced about us. So that helps building the trust. And that goes really a long way to push the whole thing. So I'm quite confident that despite the challenges that may or may not come up due to whatever economic situation we're going into, we will find a way. Because we have a solution that we're providing, and we want to build on that trust which you already have.
Yeah, I mean, this Google process and due diligence, I'm also just thinking in my head while I'm listening to you, it's actually a no-brainer to just wait for them to do the due diligence and to just say, well, please tell me where can I invest, because that's the perfect deal flow that they create there. 700 applicants, 40 fantastic investments. And Victoria, if I'm correct, you mentioned that in the last batch you had 2 million investment that led to 81 million on follow-up investments in these startups. Is that from your network of VCs?
Partially, but I guess it's really also about the signal, right? To show like Google believes in these companies, trust these companies. So why wouldn't I? So I think we're hoping for a lot more of this in this round. And also we're still working with the founders from last year are also amazing. So yeah, absolutely. I think I agree with you. It should be a no-brainer for all the VCs to just take our entire cohort and put all their money behind them.
Yeah, especially since they've been really raising themselves as well, the question of diversity. Big VC companies, for example, from Europe, have come to realize that they're missing out on 80%, for example, I have a data on that, female founding teams and applicants, which they couldn't believe themselves. And I think it could be similar probably if we had data on black founders and so on and so forth. And this is very, very, very valuable deal flow. Maybe to finish the discussion, what are your guys' milestones for this year? What's coming next? Where can the community support you? Where can we support you?
Okay, if I may go first again, our milestone, definitely 140 dealers on our platform at the end of the year. We want to grow. Secondly, we want to use also the momentum that we got from Google to build our technology base for the next year, where we will expanding the offering that we have to our customers. So like, the Adapters and so on of the world. And thirdly, we want to grow the team. So actually was happy to sign another work contract yesterday again for another employee. So it's also great that we are moving into this model of employer being a role model ourselves, and that's great. So those are the three areas that we are targeting, and we really look forward to the cooperation with Google during this growth phase, which I'm sure will propel it even more.
Perfect.
And having used that word, I can hand over to Propel.
Yeah, perfect. So this year for us, we are building what we call our community as a service platform. So right now, we actually have the largest database of communities in Africa. So 240,000 members, 50 plus communities, DevOps communities, Google developer groups, data science communities, people doing amazing stuff. And so where I guess would need some help is, firstly, with that community, we have a lot of data, and we're looking for companies that are looking to take a chance on diverse talent, right, and hire from emerging markets. We are a very strong pipeline partner, and if you have any companies or clients or startups or scale-ups that are looking to hire tech talent, we are your go-to person. So that's our main goal for this year. We are super excited about Google and then the community that they've given us access to, and just finally the validation that it has created in terms of our journey so far. So this year is so far so good. We're happy about where we are.
Fantastic. Last but not least, Humphrey.
Yes, I'll take on. Right. Yeah. So for us, this year it's growth. We have big growth ambitions. So we are looking to grow our customer base, specifically our customer base of industrial manufacturers, to at least 20 manufacturers on the platform, because we are very confident, based on what we've seen so far, that we do have a platform that's capable of generating impact in the area of sustainable manufacturing. So we really want to spread that impact as wide as we can across Europe. And for that, obviously, we need money. So the grant from Google has already put us on a very good step towards that. But anyone out there with money that wants to put it in a great platform, we'll be happy to talk to you about that. Yeah.
Fantastic. All the very, very best for this year and all the upcoming years. Keep us updated. Send us your pitch decks and media information, because I would like to report about this company. Super relevant problems that you're solving. And I think this is the best ingredient for creating next global leaders, supported obviously in this early stage from Google. Thank you, Victoria, for bringing these fantastic founders to our talk. Thank you for being with us and giving you all these insights. All the best, and we'll keep in touch. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
So much.
Thank you for being with us. This was our talk with Google for Startups, especially with the receivers from Black Founders Fund. Stay tuned. Super solutions, super startups. Grateful for having them with us. Thank you and ciao.